I'm Marshall Goldsmith. So happy to see you today on LinkedIn Live. I am an executive educator, an executive coach, and an author. And I am here today with Michelle Tillis Lederman. Michelle has just got a great new book out called The Connector's Advantage. She is a world's expert on this topic, ranked by Forbes as one of the top 25 people in the world, and it's a big world, on the topic of networking. She's an author, she's a coach, she's a consultant, she travels about giving people advice, and she's talking about a topic that we can all relate to. Even more important, she's a member of our wonderful 100 Coaches community. So honored to have her be a member of our happy community. Michelle, briefly introduce yourself and we'll get started.
Well, I'm so honored to be in this community, and thanks so much for having me on your show. Well, you told some of the work stuff, but what people don't always know about me is that I'm a recovering CPA. I spent the first decade of my career in finance. And actually, that's kind of what drew me to this career, because of the frustration that I saw in the way people communicated and led and obviously connected or didn't connect. But what's really more interesting about me is that I am a travel enthusiast. I'm an adrenaline junkie. I am an animal lover and mother of two. And that's kind of more interesting than sometimes the work, but I love my work.
Yeah, life is good. Life is good. And we've got wonderful people joining us already from around the world.
Hi, Sue.
Hi, Sue. It's very nice to see you. And well, again, really, really nice people joining us. You know, I love the topic of your work, which is connection.
Yeah.
For those people who are new to you, what is a connector and why should you bother to be one?
And that's probably the most important thing we can tell people. A connector is simply somebody who puts relationships first in everything that they do. In all their interactions, personal, professional, the relationship is the priority in those interactions. And connectors have a certain way of behaving and interacting that enables that deeper connection. But more importantly, why should we care? It's because whatever it is that you are working on or towards, you're going to get there faster, easier, and better through your relationships. And that's really what the connector's advantage is: faster, easier, better results. And I got stats to back this up. I love stats. You know, you can take the girl out of accounting, but not accounting out of the girl. When it comes to getting a job, 90% of jobs at the executive level and 85% of jobs at any level come from who you know. If it's promotion, you're 70% more likely to get a promotion if you have an active mentor relationship. Again, the relationship's driving it. People trust referrals. 92% of people trust referrals. You're 4 times more likely to buy when referred by a friend. I mean, the statistics are amazing, but the ones that shock me, and Marshall, these ones people don't always know about, it is about health and happiness. Those connections are really more important than on your health and mortality than as if obesity, right? So you are more likely to die from social isolation than from obesity. And it has an equal impact on mortality than if you smoke 15 cigarettes a day.
That's amazing. That is just, and you know, I can't say, you know, I'm totally shocked by that because I'm a great believer in everything you do. And, you know, over COVID, I spent time with 60 of these incredible leaders, and they get a chance to be with each other. And, you know, people are lonely today. People are existentially lonely. And there's no saying it's lonely at the top. Today, it's lonelier at the top. And we don't live where we were brought up. We don't have this sense of community like we used to. And I think people loved it, being able to talk to each other, to talk about their lives without feeling being judged. And you're a member of our little community, the 100 Coaches community. What's that like in terms of connection?
Well, you know, I love everything that you're saying about community, because we have to create our own communities. And I love that you created this community. And I only joined your community at the end of 2019. So I was very new to it and just kind of starting to meet some people in the community when COVID hit and everything got locked down. Right. And so, you know, people say that it's been this time of distancing, but I always say physical distancing, we don't have to be emotionally distant. And I think it's actually really enhanced the possibility of creating community and connection. And you did this fabulous thing where you had us on the phone every day, sometimes really, really early. And we got to see all these faces and go into breakout rooms and start to meet people and start to recognize names. And then we started to taper off, but we still continue to do it. And I feel more a part of the community now through that. So I think it is about creating our own communities and being more intentional about it. And
Mhm.
we have to be a little more intentional about it because of this new hybrid, remote, distance world that we're in.
I completely agree with you. I mean, I think that oddly enough, in the world of coaching, for example, these 60 people that Mark Thompson and I spent every weekend with over the entire COVID experience, they're from all around the world. We couldn't have done that live and in person. So it really kind of forced us to be kind of creative and come up with new and different ways to be, in your terminology, to be connectors and help people connect with each other. And I think a lot of people, as I said, if you're a CEO of a company, you don't have anybody to talk to. You can't really talk to your board about everything, and you can't talk to, the people you manage about everything. And sometimes your family doesn't understand it. So to be able to be with other very distinguished people who don't have an agenda, they're not trying to prove something, you're not trying to prove something. It's just very important to have these kind of connections. I mean, one guy in our group, I'm living here in Nashville now, is Greg Jones. And Greg's a great guy. He's the new president of Belmont College or Belmont University. And I said, Greg, we can be good friends. Well, you're a president of a university. You got to go out there selling all the time, raising money. That's part of your job. And either you're selling them something or they're selling you something. So it's just nice to have some people you can talk to where you're not selling, they're not buying, you're just trying to help each other. So it's been a very, very positive idea. Now, this next question I love, is being a connector, is that something you're born with, or is that something that is made or born? I get asked this question all the time about leadership. What do you think about being a connector?
I get this question all the time. And the truth is, when I started the research, I actually thought there were some innate qualities that connectors had that enabled them to do this. And I had ideas about self-esteem and conscientiousness and extroversion and emotional intelligence and locus of control and all of these ideas. And I did a study, and the research showed me that there was very moderate variations between connectors and non-connectors in most of those attributes. And the one differentiation was the personal satisfaction derived from connecting people was 60% greater in connectors than non-connectors, which kind of reinforced it. But what it told me, and it completely changed the direction of the book, it told me that anybody can be a connector. Anybody can learn these attributes and behaviors and infuse them into their interactions and get the connector's advantage.
Well, it's really interesting because I'm always asked this question, are leaders born or made? And, I have a very, I think, profound answer. You like numbers and math, and I'm pretty willing to stick with this one. So far, and I think the same may be true for connectors, 100% of the leaders that I've coached have indeed been born. Yes, how about connectors? Were they born? Yes.
I love that. And I just saw great. Yeah. Ann Loudon and hi, Ann, just popped up a comment that said no agenda connections. And that's what you're describing, Marshall. And I love that. And the truth is, though, I think the agenda can just be connection.
Right.
And there's certain relationships that we all need and want in our lives, with the mentors and the followers. But the confidants and the sounding boards, that's what I heard you talking about when you got those 60 leaders together.
Right.
And there's so many opportunities that this new world has opened up for us because, getting everybody's schedules to align, especially at the level that you are working with, is so challenging. We can't get them all to fly in on the same day, but we can get them all to Zoom in on the same day. And we can just create those things that would happen naturally in person.
Yeah.
We can have them maybe not as natural, but we can create those moments in this hybrid world.
And what we did is Mark Thompson and I did this. We did 6 sessions each weekend. We spent hundreds of hours on this, 6 sessions each weekend. So they had some choices too. And we also rotated the groups. So you didn't know who was going to be in your group every weekend. So, really interesting, neat people, all different walks of life. And, I think it's just been great. Now, one thing you talk about is the spectrum of connection. Okay, what is the spectrum? And talk about the various gradations and just talk about that.
You got it. So probably nobody who's listening today is a non-connector. A non-connector doesn't even believe in the value of relationships. right? And there's very few people, I think, that are truly non-connectors. But what we have is it's fluid. It's a spectrum. So there's two things that help us elevate up the spectrum of connection. And the first is whether or not we are responding or initiating. So an emergent connector believes in it, but just doesn't know how to do it yet. When they start responding to incoming requests for introductions, for assistance, they become a responsive connector. So from emerging to responsive to acting. And once we are both initiating and responding, we are in that acting phase, right? We are putting people together. We're looking for ways to add value. We're thinking about these mindsets of a connector and infusing them into our interactions. And this is a great place for people to strive. If you want to keep climbing up the spectrum, the other lever is the breadth and depth of your connections. Right. So when we think about how deep we go in an area, that's a niche connector, right? My sister, she knows everybody in New Jersey real estate law. She is in a niche. Everybody knows her and she knows everybody. But if we broaden and we think about broadening up and down the ladder across industry, across geography, demography, where, you know that saying, Marshall, where it's like, I got a guy, right? Oh, I know somebody.
Right.
That's somebody who is a super connector. They just have such a depth and breadth across so many areas that there are very few degrees of separation away from that person you may need to meet.
Now, are you originally from New Jersey or did you just move there?
I'm a Jersey girl. I flatten the hair for you. It's usually much bigger.
When you said, I got a guy, the Jersey came out with that one. You know, I got a guy.
I am a Jersey girl.
Now, I've got a question. You talk about 7 mindsets. What are the 7 mindsets? And tell me a little more about that. By the way, hello, Stacy. Hello, Stacy.
Oh, hi, Stacy. So good to see you here. I love, and I'm going to answer your question in a second, but Stacy's point is so true. I found that I connected more with my college friends during COVID because we would Zoom and we would do online trivia and we would do happy hours. And it actually brought people together right. if you allowed it. So yes, thank you for that comment, Stacy. Okay, so the 7 mindsets of a connector: open and accepting. Connectors trust. They have a clear vision. They come from a place of abundance. They are social and curious. They are conscientious. And the one that you are highlighted in is they have a generous spirit. And yes, I interviewed Marshall for the book, and that's actually how we got connected. And then I wouldn't let that connection go because I was so inspired by you.
Thank you so much. To me, back to the generous spirit one, let me give you one thing that inspired me on that is when I was a kid, I was brought up very poor, Valley Station, Kentucky, and we had something called the March of Dimes bread drive to raise money for this charity. And the way it worked is you knock on the door and say, the nice bakery has donated bread. And if you donate money, we're going to give you his bread. That's what you're supposed to do. Now, our high school came in first place in the entire county, although we were the poorest high school. What happened? I told my team, don't do that. You got to throw away the bread anyway if they don't use it. What are you going to do with old bread, right? You knock on the door and you say, look, the nice bakery has made a loaf of bread and we're going to give you the bread. If you want to donate money, that's fine. If you don't, that's okay too. Just keep the bread. What I said is if they're too poor and they need the bread, give them the bread. Give them the bread. You're not hurting anything.
And I love this story.
And don't try to bribe people with a loaf of bread. To me, that's demeaning to people. Don't try to bribe people. So that was kind of a motto of mine. Give people the bread.
So you are really talking about that mindset of a generous spirit and give because you can, because you want to, and without expectation of anything in return.
Right.
And when you give without that expectation, sometimes that reciprocity happens and sometimes it doesn't. But what happens is when we see good, we do good, right? When good is given to us, we might give good to someone else, and it's non-linear. And that's the one thing I want to highlight. When I talk about these mindsets, it is not do one, then do the next, then do the next. It's mindsets that enable each other. It's really hard to have a generous spirit, right? And to give that bread if you don't come from a place of abundance and believe that there will be enough. Right. And it's very difficult to, trust if, you don't have that conscientiousness or that abundance mindset. So these mindsets really do enable each other. But I love that story. I actually highlighted it in the book.
And to me, that's really important because in the 100 Coaches, by the way, which I think is a great example, hopefully, of everything you talk about in the book, in our 100 Coaches, one of the rules is there's pay it forward. So the idea is you give to others, but there's no expectation they have to give something back to you. And the other thing I like is feed forward, where in our group of 60, each person comes with a problem, a challenge, and they ask the group for ideas. And people give you ideas. There's no expectation of payment or anything. And you don't critique the ideas. You just say thank you. You say thank you for the ideas, and you treat the idea like a gift. And the only expectation is you help somebody else.
You took the words right out of my mouth. I always talk about that as a gift, right? Information, feedback, feed forward, advice, guidance, even a simple thank you. All of those things are gifts. And for those people out there that are listening who feel like they don't have anything to offer, you have so much to offer, because appreciation, recognition, your willingness to give to someone else, those are all gifts. And I'll never forget when I was working on my first book, I had somebody in my life, her name is Amy. She might even be out there today. And she really gave me a lot of advice as I was starting out. And she was so far ahead of me, I really didn't feel like there was any way I could add value back to her. So instead, I was doing the same thing she did for me for other entrepreneurs. So she gave me the confidence to start my own business 17, 18 years ago. And in that time, anytime somebody else was like, hey, I'm thinking about starting a business, would you, let me pick your brain a little bit? I would sit with them. And I'm sharing this story to talk. And I told Amy that I've spoken to over 100 entrepreneurs because of her. So I was paying it forward and backward by giving her the credit. And the audience is like, I'm one of those people, Michelle. And I was like, oh, hi. And then somebody else was like, oh, I'm one of those people too, Michelle. And then half the audience raised their hand. I'm on stage. I start to cry because I'm so moved by seeing all these people who showed up. I didn't even know they were there. And I said, I guess I need to increase this number to 500 people. And probably at this point in time, I've sat with over 1,000 startup entrepreneurs because of the gift that somebody gave to me. And so that's, I think, that idea of paying it forward and that generous spirit.
We're going through a very unique time with COVID, the pandemic, and we also have a lot of, I guess the word is divisiveness. My club, your club, you're not me, I'm not you. And give people some suggestions as how they might expand the diversity in their lives.
So the last section of my book is all about expanding and diversifying. And the first thing is that we have to understand the value of that diversification, right? We understand it as, okay, so back to my finance days, we understand diversification when it comes to our portfolios, right? We want to invest in different areas to hedge our bets, so to speak. Mm-hmm. Well, that same diversification in our relationships also adds so much value. Organizations with diverse teams make decisions faster, are considered more creative and innovative. They make better decisions, right, not just faster decisions. So we really want to have that diverse thinking because that will avoid issues like groupthink. But on the personal side, it gives you access to different thoughts, to different perspectives. It broadens our view. So one, I want you to see the value in it. And then the challenge is breaking out and building those connections. And, in my book, I've interviewed, not just you, but another 30 experts in these different fields. And one of those experts gave me one of my favorite ideas, and it's having a host mindset. And I think that when you are in any environment, whether you're the host or not, if you have a host mindset, your goal is to make people feel comfortable and welcome and bring them in and help them engage. And if you are that person that helps bring somebody in, you're starting to build the foundation of relationship with them. So one of the things he always says is, I look for the person who seems the most out of place, and I go and invite them over. I personally have a rule: if I'm at a live event, I want to make sure I'm sitting next to somebody new, at least on one of my two sides, right? So that there's always somebody new that you're meeting and bringing in those new relationships. And when you are in those conversations, call out the similarities. We are so used to being aware of and so cognizant of the differences, because sometimes those differences are obvious and the similarities are not. So I want you to be a little bit of a detective and look for those similarities, look for those places of common interest and common values and common experiences and common people and common places, because we don't connect on what we do for a living. We just connect on what we like to do.
Yeah, I like that. I've got a new book coming out in May. It's called The Earned Life. By the way, order it often and as many as you can. It's coming out in May. And in the book, I talk about my friend Roosevelt Thomas. Roosevelt, no longer with us, one of the world's experts in diversity. And he told me a couple of points relative to what you're saying. He said, one, we all have different referent groups. Now, a referent group is a group of people that we want to be like, we respect, we look up to. For me, my referent group was pretty clear. It was Peter Drucker, Warren Bennis, Richard Beckhard, Francis Hesselbein, people who were great thinkers in our field. And you mentioned generous, who were very kind and generous to me and didn't charge me money. So my goal is just be like them. Just be like them. And they were always heroes to me, and I wanted to be like them. So Aisha Roussel, who you might know is in our group, I love her. She did this program, Design the Life You Love, and asked me who were my heroes. Well, they were. And back to pay it forward, well, if I'm generous, because they were generous to me. So everything I do is kind of dedicated to them because they went out of their way to help me. They didn't get paid any money for it. I'm a Buddhist. Last time I checked, Buddha didn't send me bills for his stuff, which I use constantly. So, I think it's very good. So Roosevelt said, we need to recognize different people have different referent groups. And it doesn't mean it's good or bad. Some people that might be the nation. Some people that might be their community. Some people it might be their family, themselves. And if you understand a person's referent group, you may not have the same referent group they do, but you're less likely to hate them because you just think, well, they're different than I am. Roosevelt also talked about the difference between what he called requirements and preferences. And sometimes people are different, but if you're in a business or organizational setting, who cares? And he gave the example of Phil Jackson, a great basketball coach, and one of his players was Dennis Rodman. Well, a lot of people didn't care for Dennis Rodman because he had different color hair and was always doing weird stuff. But Roosevelt's point was, Phil Jackson's point was, who cares? He's leading the league in rebounds. And I've already got plenty of scores. This guy's a great defender. He's leading the league in rebounds. I don't care what color his hair is. His hair be pink or yellow or aqua. He may or may not have a preference for that color hair, but it doesn't matter. It doesn't matter. You don't have to have everybody be just like you. So again, Roosevelt taught me a couple points are really good in that area of diversity. Now we've got a nice comment here. My major growth as a coach came from client leaders who were the most different from me in age. Different from me, age, gender, continent, field, etc. I feel the same way. I like diversity. When I have dinners, I like to have dinners. I'm like you, though. I don't like to have everybody be the same. Let me tell you another reason I agree with you. If people are too much the same, they start competing. My company's bigger than your company, blah, blah, blah. But if you have a CEO, the head of a nonprofit, the athlete, the Broadway star, whatever, they're not competing with each other. They're just different. So I think you gain a lot. Also, you gain fresh perspectives from people who are very different. Any thoughts?
I have so many thoughts that are going in my mind right now. And I loved Orly's comment about being challenged as a coach. I actually love it when clients choose somebody who's very different from them because it pushes them. And I would actually challenge everybody out there to think about, who do I have in my life that's giving me contrary views, who's pushing my thinking, who's not just, in that same corner as me, that same mindset, that same perspective, that same background, where we just have all of this agreement. Who is challenging the way in which I think to broaden the way I think? So I love that. And I think that goes back to the relationships that we want and need that we were talking about, the mentors and the followers. Those heroes, another word for them is a mentor. And to really think about, how do we diversify those that we look up to and that we're emulating so that we're bringing different things in to who we are. Now, there was something else that you said that really jumped at me, which was the competition piece, right? So if we're two alike, we're in competition. And the mindset of abundance really is the area in which we try to pull away from that thinking. When we come from a place of abundance, it is not that Pollyanna thinking. It's not everything's wonderful. It's the idea that although things might not be the way I want them to be, the possibility is there. And for me, I always think back to, I started in finance in the early 90s, and there was no female partners at the firm. There was one female senior manager, and nobody wanted to work for her because her philosophy was one of scarcity. There's no women at the top. There's only going to be one that's going to get there. It's going to be me, and I'm going to step on everybody to get there.
Yep.
Abundant mindset would be, hey, there might not be any there yet, but hey, there's not just room for one. I think 3 of us or 5 of us, let's work on this together. Right. And we can all, move that needle. And so one of the things of a mindset of abundance, because this is probably one of the hardest mindsets for people to adopt, is to stop comparing yourself to other people. There's always somebody better. There's always somebody worse.
Right.
But instead, what are my goals? What am I working on? For example, I launched my LinkedIn newsletter this past week, and I just had a goal of getting to, 1,000 subscribers in the first week. It doesn't compare to the newsletter that you put out there, and that's okay, right? It was my goal, and I feel abundant because I accomplished that goal.
Good.
So yes, we don't need to compare ourselves. And the other piece of that is having a practice of gratitude. And that practice can look a lot of different ways, but I like a really simple practice of gratitude. And for me, it's something I started with my kids because I have teenage boys now. And they tend to be very negative. And all those parents of teenagers out there know what I'm going through right now. Everything is bad, right?
Right.
Like, how was the day? Awful. All the bad stuff comes. Right? So I started asking the question, what was the best part of your day? Or what was the good in today? Even though today might not have been good, tell me one good of today. And so that little reminder, that small moment of gratitude, that habit is something anybody can do at any time.
I love that. Now, before you feel too bad about those teenage boys, I, believe it or not, once was a teenage boy. And I am distinguished to say I was the first in my class at age 14 to be arrested. So, I wasn't exactly the poster boy of teenagers myself. So yes, I was arrested for drunken disorderly conduct at age 14 years old. My parents, the Southern Baptist Sunday school teachers, were less than thrilled with my performance. So anyway, man, you got teenage boys.
You're making me feel better because they have not gotten arrested.
There you go.
Apparently I'm ahead of the game.
No arrest. What the heck, man? I'd be declaring victory. You had 2 teenage boys. Neither has been arrested ahead of me. Now wait.
I must be doing something right, I guess.
Before we depart, this is my opportunity. My mission is to make a positive difference in as many people's lives as I can in the limited time I have left to do it. And I'm not naive. I'm 73. This show doesn't last forever. Okay, now you're the coach. You're the coach. You're the connecting coach. Give me some ideas. What do I need to do?
Keep connecting, right? Don't think about, and I don't think you need this advice because I know you do it. I see you do it.
Don't apologize. Give me the advice. I'll say no.
The advice is that we want to not network for now or network for need. We want to think about those relationships and those connections just because. Build them because you enjoy building them. If you like the conversation, be in the conversation without any direction of where it's going. And nurture, keep in touch. Stay in somebody's mind, don't get in their face. And when you need those relationships, they will be there because you've been there for them.
Yay. All right, now this is your opportunity. You have a chance to get coaching from the one, the only, the spectacular Dr. Marshall Goldsmith. All right. What's your goal? And give me a question. How can I help you?
My goal is to help make a more connected world. And this is one of the ways that I'm doing that. So for those people who want to think about how I am more connected to my family, to my team, to my organization, creating connected cultures, connected leaders, follow me, subscribe to my newsletter. And, Marshall, keep spreading the word about connection and the community that you are always doing, because you model the behavior. And I see it in what you did with the leaders, but I also see it what you did with the MG 100. All of those same techniques that we can borrow, that you all listening out there, those leaders that are listening out there, borrow and bring them to your teams and create connection.
See, one thing I would strongly suggest you keep doing is build your brand and build a global brand. Build a global. Oh, Deepak Sethi is there. Great friend of mine. How you doing? How you doing? Great to see you. We're just a good friend from years gone by. Build a global brand, because, most of the people in my LinkedIn are not from the United States. So I think it's really good to build a global brand, because you can help people then all around the world. And to the degree you really focus on, making some connections that will help you build that positive global brand. Because I think your message is not constrained to the United States or any geography. It's a global message. So that's my final advice for you. And finally, any last word before we wrap up?
Well, thank you for that advice. And thank you for having me on your show. It's always a pleasure to be connecting with you.
Thank you. And thank you for joining me. You're wonderful. And my mission is to help people have a little better life. And I think if they listen to you, they take advantage of it, they'll have a little better life. So thank you for helping me help, hopefully, somebody else. Thank you so much.
Thank you, Marshall. Bye, everybody. Keep connecting.
Bye-bye.